What's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. Today is a very special day. This will be the very first podcast episode. We got a special guest. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself in a moment. But yeah, basically, I'm starting this to gather people onto the channel, talk about their journeys in cybersecurity, what they like, what they don't like, what they would recommend, what type of advice that they would like to provide to the audience. And I think this is a really good thing to just showcase people's efforts and the hard work that they put in. So, without further ado, you can introduce yourself.
Hi guys, my name is Yusuf Bashir. I'm a student, FIU, junior currently. I'm actually in the same organization as him in Risk Lab FIU. We do a lot of cybersecurity stuff, AI stuff, as well as research with things like the Everglades and so on. Um, my journey started back in cybersecurity a long time ago, but to give a summary of what I do right now, I'm a cybersecurity trainer, mostly red teaming. I train in at a company called Cornelius, Florida, and I have a couple certifications: the EJPT, ECPPT as well, the CompTIA A plus, Security Plus, and the Pentest Plus. Just recently, we both passed that just recently, so
Yes.
that was a big accomplishment for us.
Hmm.
And yeah, I guess we'll talk more about all those
Yeah,
things.
yeah, we'll go into a lot more detail. So, really good introduction. Of course, this is a cybersecurity channel, so this is mainly what we're going to be talking about. Certifications, recommendations, advice. Like I said, like he said, we both go to Florida International University. A good friend of mine, met him in college, and we're a part of an organization called Risk Lab, where we gather a bunch of students who are pursuing cybersecurity and may need help in figuring out which domain of cybersecurity that they would like to pursue. So this is basically our main thing, and yeah, so let's get started. So with first question, basic question, I really think this is a good one to start it off. What got you interested into cybersecurity? What was your main pathway, I would say, in the journey of learning
Dude,
cybersecurity?
honestly, it's like really long. But I think most of my family isn't really in tech. Like my dad, mom, nobody really. My brother's kind of. He's a software engineer, but none of us really started out like. I'm not from a tech family.
Right.
My uncle's in security or IT or something, I think. But generally, yeah, nobody's in tech. But when I was a kid, I got introduced to. Well, I got my own MacBook for homework and stuff, and just from there, things kind of happened, and my device got hacked at some point. I guess maybe I downloaded something that I shouldn't have downloaded or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
Pirating
Yeah.
was big back then,
Yeah. Yeah.
and my device got hacked, and from there, I guess I just got really, really curious on how a person did it. In
Right.
fact, it was somebody I knew actually, a friend of mine. He did it as a prank, but he got access, I guess, through whatever I downloaded. Um, and yeah, that just really sparked like an interest in my head. Is like, how did he do it? How did he do it? And then that led me to learning things like Python. And then from Python, I kind of became interested in programming, but that kind of died out.
Right.
Then I got into learning like Linux
Yeah.
using the terminal,
Yeah.
but I still never really found like what is security. Like I didn't really know it was a field kind of thing.
Right.
And so then eventually I got like I remember I bought a course for hacking on Udemy. It was like $10. It was some
Yeah.
really iffy course. It wasn't great. Like
Right.
it was all right though. And I learned Wi-Fi hacking from that. And then eventually around that time was when like this was 2016, maybe 2015, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
I was about 11 years old. So Hack the Box became popular at that point. And then I found out about that through some YouTube video I had watched. And then when I explored Hack the Box was when I first really got into like hacking. Like I,
Right.
started learning tools. But from there, the first box I did, I still remember it was a medium box. I think it was called medium of a box. I think it was called Time. And I remember I was stuck in the SQL. I got into the SQL server and I could not get past it. I did not know
Really.
what to do.
Wow.
And so I was stuck there for about a week or 2 weeks, just
Yeah.
learning, banging my head on a wall,
Yeah.
just pissed off.
Yeah.
But I think that experience was insanely good because I think that's what like made me know that I really want to do this. It's
For
just really
sure.
fun stuff. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. That was actually probably the next question I was going to ask was like, when was the moment where you thought like this is actually what I want to do like with my
Yeah.
life? Yeah.
I
So.
mean, for sure, when like I got on Hack the Box and I really started doing like boxes and I that eased into that process. Then
Yeah.
I heard about the OSCP, started doing some of you guys might know this, the TJ Knowles OSCP prep list.
Yeah.
I started doing those boxes, and I was like, okay, this is the blood rush I get from getting into a machine,
Right.
rooting it
Right.
was like something I never felt, and I was
Yeah.
like, this
Yeah.
is definitely what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then I got like started doing things like in the real world, Wi-Fi hacking, stuff like that, and kind of broadened my horizon. And I was like, for sure, that's what I want to do. But even at that point, I still didn't know you could make this into a career.
Right.
I kind of just knew it as like, this is kind of something I want to
You
do.
just want to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. That's really dope. I think, you know, people our age who are, from our generation, we've kind of grown up in a pretty good era in terms of technology, right? We've kind of like seen it just like rise. I remember seeing a couple other people who are older than us who have taken like a really big interest in computers, but didn't have like as many opportunities as we have in terms of like, knowing that they could do or make money from this type of stuff. So, really, really fortunate, I think, for us, a lot of gratitude and just being able to know that, there's just so many things we can do with computers, and it's just continuously
Mhm.
elevating. Like, this is really just the beginning of all of
Yeah,
it.
for sure. I mean, personally, I think like the era that we grew up in, we kind of came. We're like the late bloomers. Like we kind of were born, and then we kind of like around when we were just getting into our teens is when
Yeah, yeah,
hacking or just cybersecurity in general started to get
yeah,
mainstream. And then
yeah.
once we got older, then it became really
Right,
mainstream.
right,
But like the golden era, they always say is of hacking and like security was like 1990s,
right, right.
2000s, and we
Yeah,
kind of missed that
yeah,
for
definitely.
the most part. But
I wish.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, back then hacking was logging into a server, and now you're like in a CIA
Yeah,
server, right?
yeah,
Because nobody cared about security back then.
yeah. Xbox 360 days,
Yeah,
not much
and
of
I mean it
that.
was just different.
Yeah,
But now, um, it's so much more like. I mean, they take security so much more seriously, and
right,
because of that, I think a lot of people are coming into security just because it's become so important
right,
in the modern world.
right.
But I think at the point that I was sort of learning and growing, it wasn't that mainstream. So that there weren't many resources back then.
Right,
But now, I mean, there's so many resources that you don't know which resource to use to
right.
sort of get into the field
Yeah,
or learn what you want to
it's
do, kind of
overwhelming.
thing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, yeah, it's really there's a lot out there, but it's hard to know, like you said, like what to pick and what
Hmm.
route to go down because
Hmm.
it's such a huge influx of information.
Yeah.
So I agree. Um, so how would you say, you said you're interested in pen testing, red teaming, that kind of stuff. And this applies to people in the blue team as well. How would you say you approach learning something new? Like, when you learn a new tool or like the methodology or something like that, like what do you do? Like what's your approach into learning like new information?
So I mean, I think you and I both know this. I mean, there's like in this field, I would say you're always. I mean, there's never a point where you're not learning.
Right.
You're always learning something new. I mean, we just got like LLMs now,
Yeah.
Chat GPT, things like that, and it's
AI,
opened
yeah.
up a whole new plethora of like attack vectors.
Sure.
So you're always learning for sure. To approach learning something new, I think there's a couple ways. And personally, the way I take it is like, for example, take a box and hack the box or anything, right?
Yeah.
Let's say we're learning Wi-Fi hacking,
Yeah.
right? Instead of watching and being stuck in tutorial hell, like a lot of you guys might have heard of this, I've been stuck in tutorial hell as well. It
Hmm.
sucks, right? You're just constantly looking at tutorials, things you already know, but you keep watching them. You never implement it,
Exactly.
and that's the problem. You have to implement what you learned, or even if you didn't learn it, you have to try it out.
Yeah.
And so, like when I picked up anything new, I think generally the way I approached it was doing it and then learning in the process of doing it instead of learning everything beforehand
Yes.
and then attacking it, right?
Yeah.
And the problem if you do it like that is when you hit a roadblock, then you think that there's something wrong that doesn't apply to you,
Yeah.
right? Because you're like, oh, I already know everything about this, and so there's either something wrong with my methodology or there's something wrong with the thing that I'm attacking
Right.
or the thing that I'm working with,
Right.
right? Instead of thinking that, oh, I don't know, there's something I'm missing in the piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because you come in with this mindset now that I've learned this topic.
Right.
But really, there's just so much depth in anything that you go into. Like in Wi-Fi hacking, you start out, you learn about WPA, WPA2, WPA3, but then in each one of those, like you have to learn about, let's say, the four-way handshake. Then within the four-way handshake, you have to learn about transient keys and master keys, and all these things sort of more and more and more until you go into cryptography. Then you go into the fun, and they're just a never-ending plethora of things you can learn, right?
Right.
So personally, I think what I've always done is I've attacked, or I've in my case, right, attacked a box or whatever, and in the process of attacking it, I picked up new skills,
Right.
and I sort of either wrote them down mentally or actually took note of them.
Right.
There are two things that I always tell like my trainees is there's something called known unknowns, and you also have what's called unknown
Right.
unknowns,
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
Known unknowns are those things that you know that you don't know,
Yeah.
and there are unknown unknowns where there are those things that you don't know that you don't know,
Yeah.
right? You don't even know they exist.
Yeah.
And the goal that I've always told them is it's fine if you have a lot of known unknowns, but you should try to discover as many unknown unknowns as possible. Because with known unknowns, for example, you're attacking. This is a little bit more technical, but let's say you're attacking a specific service like FTP, File
Yeah.
Transfer Protocol. It's
Mm-hmm.
a file server, saves files, and you can access them as a client to that file
Mm-hmm.
transfer server, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know how FTP works fundamentally, but you know that it exists,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you see it in the field, you can then learn about it, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't even know that it exists, or you don't know how to find whether FTP exists, then you're kind of in trouble because you don't know that it exists,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So if you discover those unknown unknowns, then whenever you need to figure out how those things work, you can do that in the field.
Yeah.
But the idea is broaden your horizons in the sense that try out a lot of things. And when you're learning something new, I would say this always worked for me, learn it in the process of working with it
That's
instead
key.
of
Yeah.
learning things that you don't need to know, right?
Right.
Like I don't need to know how to build an LLM at the point that I am, but I know kind of how it works. There's neural networks behind it.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact model,
Right.
but if I ever needed to develop my own LLM for whatever reason or train my own model, I could then figure it out because I know more or less some things behind its function,
Yeah.
right? And I could implement those things when I need to learn them instead
Right.
of just learning those things for no reason,
Agreed.
right?
Agreed.
But yeah, I think you've mentioned in the past when we've been hacking is I think you also take that approach, but like I think you like to come in more with a prepared
For
mindset,
sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think it helps with confidence as well, for
Yeah.
sure. Like some people, for sure, if you're getting in, you definitely need to cover fundamentals. So I'm not saying that you start attacking things and you don't know anything that you're doing.
Yeah.
You still need to learn fundamentals. So networking, some of networking, some programming,
Yeah.
basic Linux skills,
Yeah.
basic computer skills, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then other theoretical stuff as well, like if you're attacking a server, the client server model, and so on.
Right.
And so once you have those fundamental things covered, let's say computer architecture or whatever, now you have a basis and then you can sort of build on that basis. You still
100%.
need to know the theoretical fundamental knowledge,
Yeah.
right? And then after that, you can start implementing the way I learned.
Right. Right. Yeah. The learning literally never ends. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I would say that definitely is correct. Definitely working on building that base and then just building on top of that each and every day
Yeah,
of like when
exactly.
you're hacking or whenever you're securing something, blue team,
Mhm.
whatever the case may be.
And even if you think about it, even like a couple last week, I think it was last week, we were doing one of the Active Directory boxes on
Yeah.
HackerBox,
Yeah.
and there was like some attack vectors that I never heard of or I
Right.
never really done.
Right.
For example, Active Directory certificate services, which is like a whole different method of authentication and so on. And I had to read articles and I had to read what's it called? The develop. There's a research paper called "Certified Pre-Owned"
Yeah.
by two researchers who basically figured out, I think, about 10 ways to attack Active Directory certificate services. So I didn't know anything about that, but I had to read it.
Right.
I had to read some of it, and I had to learn. So I'm still
Research.
learning, even
Yeah.
after like what 6 years now or
Yeah.
7 years of
Yeah.
being in the field. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So always learning.
Always. Yeah. And like you said, practicality is definitely the gold mine, I think. Not only just reading, but taking action, getting your brain to understand, like, how it's done. And experimenting is literally like that is the name of the game.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you don't experiment, like I think a lot of a problem that people run into is they try to memorize the way to attack something instead of understanding how to attack it,
Yeah.
right? Like, let's say you're using a tool like Nmap, right, Network Mapper, and you're trying to figure out the open ports in a system that can allow you to get into it. One approach is you memorize the different tools that you might need to use, the different command options that you might need to use in order to find open ports.
Right.
And one is understanding what those things do.
Yeah.
Right? You might use a certain flag, but you don't know what it does. The
Right.
tool is just functioning, and you just let it function.
Right.
Another way is you understand what it does, and then questions come in your head like, why does this work?
Yeah.
Right? You attack a system like FTP, right? And you found a backdoor in, let's say, one of the FTP versions. and you just run an exploit like on a tool like Metasploit, which automates the whole exploitation process,
Yeah.
and then you don't try to understand why it works and you don't experiment with it, try to manually exploit it,
Hmm.
then what happens is you're not really learning anything.
Yeah.
You're just going through the steps of attacking without actually picking up new knowledge.
Right.
When you actually try to use that exploit manually without an automated tool, then what happens is you get past that learning curve and you're working your way up that learning curve where now you're experimenting, you're hitting roadblocks, and you're really understanding how the service that you're attacking, how does it work?
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so I think that's really important. A lot of people get stuck in this mindset of just understanding the theoretical knowledge to the extent that they need to, and then when they actually implement it in the real world and things don't work, then they don't try to explore why those things don't work.
Yeah.
They just think there's something wrong with their methodology, or they hit the roadblock and they're just done. They
Right.
don't want to take that time out to, again, like you said, experiment. Sit down, try things out, see why they don't work, break things, and then see how to fix it. Things like that, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really an interesting thing about our field. Is I've also heard a lot of people say, we don't necessarily have to memorize everything,
Hmm.
in terms of like, commands or flags, because I mean, like, the internet is literally our manual. Like,
Hmm.
it's just like everything is right there, and we
You
don't.
have LLMs now, even, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, if you don't know something, I mean, it's just a couple keyboard clicks away, and it's
Hmm.
just like, you always constantly want to understand like how these things work. You don't necessarily have to memorize all the
Hmm.
little intricacies, but it's still important to understand like how they are working, the aspects of it, where data is being sent, how it's being modified, like
Hmm.
all that stuff is really important, because
Right.
that's basically what you're going to be doing for the
Exactly.
majority of the time.
Right, and I think one of the things I would look at, like with my trainees especially, is if they're attacking a system or let's say defending a system,
Yeah,
either one. If they can't explain to me why they did something,
yeah,
then that means they don't understand it, right?
yeah,
They just memorized it or they searched it online,
right,
right?
right,
Whereas somebody who can explain to me how to fix a system, I'll give them a broken system, right?
yeah,
A system with a lot of flaws.
yeah,
Like, fix this.
yeah,
If they can explain to me, okay, I need to do this, then I need to do this, then I need
right,
to do that in order to patch this flaw,
hmm,
but they don't know the commands to do it. Like, oh, you need to run this command and this command and this command.
hmm,
I don't care about that.
right,
But when they're like, they know the process. Okay, I need to fix this flaw, this flaw. That tells me that they understand what they need to do.
100%,
Now it's just a couple Google searches away, or
yeah,
maybe using GPT and figuring out the commands,
yeah,
right? Versus somebody who's like, oh, I can run this command, this command, this command. But when I ask them why this works,
hmm,
they're at a loss of words.
hmm,
And that signals that you're not learning the way you should be learning, right? And the thing is, I think why people do this is because that process is really tough, especially when you're starting out,
yeah,
because there's just so much you don't like. There's an insane amount of things you don't know, right? And it's overwhelming. It's like, oh, I'm gonna have to experiment for hours so I can figure this out. Versus, I'm just gonna leave it right now, get on it later, or try
yeah,
something easier because this is not at the level that I can work at.
hmm,
And that's not true. Like, if you ever look at any high achiever, uh, what they'll always tell you is like you have to do things that are not easy for you, right? But they're not so hard that they're past that growth level.
yeah,
So something that's so hard, like you're not going to attack an insane level box and hack the box if you just started out.
right,
You're going to go with an easy box because that's, I would say, probably where your skill level lies. And then as you go forward, then you start increasing the difficulty.
yeah,
But if you're already solving easy boxes within a day with not too much hassle, then that tells me that you've already passed that learning curve. You've already covered that. You don't need to keep doing those boxes.
right,
You need to now scale up the difficulty,
yeah,
right? So you're actually learning new things,
yeah,
right? If you're doing easy things all the time, and because you run into a roadblock, you're like, okay, this is too hard for me.
yeah,
You're not actually learning. You
right,
need to see that what I need to do right now is sit down and understand why this is not working and start experimenting. And I guarantee you, maybe it might take a day, it might take a week, but after you finish that and you get past that roadblock, you're gonna feel the difference in your skill, knowledge, and as well as in your mental fortitude, like
yeah,
your discipline.
yeah,
How long you can bear knowing? Because I think also this is for me, especially because uh, I was stuck doing easy boxes and hack the box for a long time, and who
yeah,
knows this? We did a lot of easy boxes together,
yeah,
and I just started doing medium level boxes, and
right,
I'm going to do a hard box very soon
yeah,
now. And I'm getting past that, pushing
threshold,
myself farther.
yeah,
And I think that the reason people don't push themselves farther than they need to is because it's like a thing where it's kind of like ego almost. It's like
yeah,
if I fail at this, that tells me that my whole life, like I'm bad at this, like I'm
Mhm.
not good at this,
Yeah.
and that hurts because that tells you that you need to get better,
Yeah.
and people don't like seeing their own flaws,
Yeah.
right? And so yes, that it's a challenging thing because it's almost like a personal thing where you're facing your own weaknesses,
Yeah.
right? And you have to get past those weaknesses.
Yeah.
But I think if you can become strong enough to face those weaknesses and you can get past it, you'll move faster than 90% of the people in this generation. Because if we be honest, in this generation, most people are not willing to put in effort, right?
For
Like they're
sure.
very most people are very lazy,
Yeah.
right? The honest truth is people see one or two roadblocks and they
Mhm.
think they're not capable of doing it or
Mhm.
this is not for them yet.
Mhm.
Even though it is, it's
Mhm.
just they don't want to face that internal self of like, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I'm not a capable person.
Yeah.
That's a scary thought to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you get past it, I guarantee you that feeling that I get when I know I get past like a tough box, like we
Right.
did the hospital box or the
Yeah.
administrator box.
Yeah.
They were medium level boxes, but when we got past them, I felt a change, right? Like
Yeah.
I felt I got better at Active
For
Directory hacking.
sure.
You know what I
For
mean?
sure.
And that's what it is, I think.
Yeah. No, comfortability, I think, is where dreams go to die. And yeah, if you're not feeling a level of discomfort, I mean, you're really not growing. You're not really doing anything of value.
I think write that down somewhere.
Yeah.
Comfortability is where dreams go to die. That's actually really good. I'm not gonna lie.
Yes, yes, so, and I think that's very true, especially in this space where people, I think, I mean, some people may disagree, but I think when it comes to computers, a lot of people's the ego is very high, like they don't really want to be looked at as somebody who doesn't know, or don't want to be wrong at certain things. But
Mhm.
there's just so much opportunity, so much growth from having a sense of humility.
Right, exactly. I think that point you touched on with like that whole thing where people do have an ego in this field, and I think the reason is because again, like the average person doesn't know as much about
For sure.
tech or things in general, like when it comes to hacking and
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
that we do,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of like the same thing with, let's say, a surgeon, right? If you were like, if a surgeon failed at one of the
Yeah.
surgeries and people
Yeah.
saw it
Yeah.
and they started saying that, like he's not a good surgeon,
Right.
that affects you because you're like, I was like looked at highly in these
It
people's eyes. Now
hurts.
I'm not.
Yeah.
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 And so I think it's the same thing here is that you just don't want to let go of that ego.
Right.
You have to be humble when it comes to that. And I think this is not like if you apply this in this one area,
Hmm.
you're gonna do so much better in all the other parts of your life as well.
For sure.
Whatever it is, fitness, whatever it might be, right? It allows you to realize that look, I'm still a human at the end of the day. I'm still learning, right? Like I'm still growing,
Yeah.
right? People you can grow even in your old age, right? It's not like growing ever stops.
Right.
So you should always be comfortable with knowing that I don't have to be like this perfect, I know it all, I know how to hack everything.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how to do that. You know what I mean? Even
Mhm.
like some of the best researchers in the world will take months to come out with new research
Exactly.
because again, they don't know everything about what they're attacking. They're learning as they go, right?
Hmm.
Same thing with a defender. He's not going to know every single thing he needs to know in
Agreed.
order to solve the problem.
Yeah.
But he's going to learn. He's going to understand that I need to grow here.
Hmm.
And then you do it. And now that's part of your skill set. That's part of your knowledge base.
Now you're
And that's how
better.
you grow.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Perfect. Um. So, can you tell us about maybe a project that you're possibly working on? Something where it's a little challenging, and you're learning a lot with doing it in the process. I know projects are a big thing in this space, especially for someone who's trying to break in
Mhm.
to the industry. Doing projects, doing labs, trying to showcase what you're doing at home,
Mhm.
and how passionate and how badly you want it, how hungry you are to break into security. What are some things that you're doing right now, like on the side?
So I'll preface this with two things. Number one is even after you've broken in, like
Hmm.
I would say, I've mostly broken in, and like even though I'm working, as a cybersecurity trainer and all
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
even then, like you still have to do projects, right?
Right.
Even I'm not stopping my projects. You can't become comfortable with where you
For
are
sure.
ever, right?
Yeah.
And number two is your project should be tailored to your interests, and your project should be tailored to the things that are relevant to your whatever discipline you're approaching.
Yeah.
Um, Now, personally, there's two projects that I'm doing. One of them is kind of delayed, or not delayed, but going a little bit slow right now, just because of all the work and classes and all that. But
Hmm.
one of the projects I was doing was building an auto checkout bot, right?
Mm.
Now I know it's in like a gray area to do this because you break the TOS, but this was mostly for my like own sake of seeing how if I can do it or not.
Right.
And honestly, I think I learned so much from building like an auto checkout bot. I also built a price tracker within that, but it was mostly the checkout bot. And the thing is, for like sneakers, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
And I think I learned so much just about. I mean, we like in security, you don't have to code as much software as much as a software engineer does,
Right.
but I think it's still almost as equally important to know how to code, to know how to read code,
Yeah.
because you're working with code, right? That's what you're working with.
Right.
So when I built that project, like number one, uh, I figured out I became a lot better with web application security, right? Because there's a lot of factors you have to consider when you're building an auto checkout bot. Number two is diligence, like, or sorry, not diligence, is discipline,
Hmm.
right? Being consistent every day, even if I don't want to, putting in that work, sitting down, writing out code, understanding how to solve a certain problem I ran into, right?
Hmm.
Because you would run into problems all the time. If I'm checking out how do I deal with this problem or that problem,
Yeah.
right? Let's say the speed at which it checks out, or how many checkouts can I do at once? All these things you have to learn about, like threading, multi-threading, right? How do I implement multi-threading into this code in a way that it doesn't break the whole code? Because the code was about 2,000 lines,
Yeah.
right? And so, I mean, a couple lines can break all the code.
Hmm.
Especially with multi-threading, it can access a resource that another resource is using, and it can crash everything.
The whole thing.
So
Yeah.
you have to really sit down and start mapping out the whole project and breaking it down into sections, and then do one section at a time.
Hmm.
And you just really learn how programmers do their job, like how software in security, we really don't consider software engineers too much. And I
Hmm.
think that's also one of our weaknesses. We don't understand the people who are building the things we're attacking
Right.
or defending, right? And so if you build something, it doesn't have to be massive, but even if it's like, let's say 2,000 lines, you're building something decently big enough that if you're building it on your own, you realize how much work is put into it and how much consideration.
Mm.
And so with this project, I learned so much about web application security, generally having good programming what's it called, programming etiquette,
Yeah.
meaning making sure that my code is readable,
Hmm.
things like that, as well as understanding how to take a problem, put it on a flowchart or like map it out, and then solve that problem incrementally, right? That's a really tough skill to have, and I think it helps a lot in hacking or defense. Let's say you're building out like a network security model to, well, let's say as a security consultant, you're building out a model to defend the security architecture of a company,
Yeah.
right, or a business. You have a lot of considerations in that. Is how do I what are the critical assets, what are the mission critical assets, what things are the most riskiest, how do I divide this whole network up into subnets properly, what should be where, all these things have to be considered, right? You might make a flow chart, might make a diagram, right? You can't just get to work. With hacking, it's a little bit different. Is we kind of just start, we have a methodology, but it's kind of in our head mostly, or maybe on paper. We start attacking the system. Obviously, you do your scanning, you do your mapping out, but you're kind of still going in blind,
Yeah.
right? In a way, it obviously depends on what kind of pen test or what kind of attack you're doing.
Right.
But generally, there's a lot of planning involved, but it's not the same kind of planning that it is on the defense or software engineering side. So I think when we learn that side, then you can also become a better attacker, knowing how the other side is operating mentally, right?
Agreed.
It's really challenging to take let's say you want to make a price tracker, right? And for those of you who might do like reselling, price trackers are great, right? Make a price tracker for Amazon, and now you have to figure out a multitude of things. How do I use this price tracker? How do I grab the price off of Amazon? Then how do I take that price and how do I put it on a chart?
Hmm.
Then how do I take that chart? How do I feed it to, let's say, a webhook that I have that points out to like some chat or some server or something, right? That it saves it into that. How do I then have multiple threads doing the same thing, right? And you're building on that. The initial problem was I just want to build a price tracker. I just
Yeah.
want to track prices for things.
Right.
But now you have multiple questions. All right, how do I pull the price off? How do I actually grab the price from the web data I pulled? How do I then track that price over time? How do I save that price into, let's say, a file or whatever? And so a simple problem became so much more complex.
Right.
One question led to 20 more questions.
Hmm.
And now you're building this whole diagram and this whole sort of map out of how I'm going to solve this issue.
Hmm.
So that, I think that's what that project gave me, just the sense of, software engineers, what they might do, and the defense side, what they might do,
Hmm.
instead of just always breaking things, right? For once actually building something.
Yeah.
And the other project I'm working on, I'm really getting into hardware hacking now.
Nice.
I'm really just into it. I love hardware hacking,
Yeah.
and I really want to get into like operational technology, industrial control systems hacking
Yeah.
as well. But I want to start out with hardware hacking because those systems are very low level generally.
Yeah.
And so with hardware hacking, you need to know some of, or I think a decent amount of computer architecture. And I think one of the classes I took at FIU actually helped me with that was CDA 312, Introduction to Computer Architecture,
Mm-hmm.
and it broke down everything I need to know about computer architecture. So with that project, I actually have a router and an IP camera, and I'm basically I pulled out the motherboard and I'm essentially testing with a multimeter where I can connect to get like maybe like a root shell on the
Yeah.
system or
Yeah.
something, or whatever prompt on the system, so I can interact with it.
Yeah.
And I'm learning a lot from that as well, like a lot of hardware hacking things. What pogo pins are, how to use pogo pins, how to use a multimeter, right?
Mm-hmm.
How exactly the ground plane on a motherboard works, right? These are things that I didn't know too much about before. How does a multimeter's continuity setting work, right? I didn't know about this until literally last night. I learned about this last night,
Right.
right? And so I'm learning new things still.
Yeah.
And the great thing is I can actually implement some of this back again in all of my other knowledge that I have. Because sometimes you might go on a pen test or you might go on some sort of attack, and there is some component of computer architecture involved. If you know at the hardware level what you're working with, then you can do so much better attacking systems,
Right.
right? And so this project is still in works. The auto checkout is basically complete. But there's a couple features I want to implement.
Mm.
But this project, it's kind of still, you know, I feel like I'm still at the first sort of hurdle because there's so much within this project.
Yeah.
Once I get the actual access into the system and pull the firmware off, then the whole reverse engineering thing is going to come into play. And I want to also improve my reverse engineering skills with this. So I think it's going to be like a lot of factors, a lot of improvements. So number one is reverse engineering, which is a
Yeah.
whole different field. If you're going to like malware reverse engineering, super useful, as well as just security research. If you're interested in like either selling bugs or reporting bugs, like 0 days, right? This is like a really good place to start from. Hardware hacking, then
Yeah.
going into reverse engineering. So definitely these two projects are my main. And I'm thinking of a couple others as well. I might go for the finally go for the OSCP,
Mm-hmm.
which I've been delaying. We did the ECPPT, the EJPT, all these certs. So definitely the OSCP is coming.
Yeah. Agree, bro. That's honestly amazing and very admirable. It really just shows, how projects can just, just open up so many different avenues. And it just shows the computer world, like how it works. Like you learn one thing, oh wait, what does this do? Oh wait, what does that do? Like the curiosity is such a key thing to have in this space when it comes to computers. That will be your driving force into determining like how good you're going to get, how much you're going to know, how valuable you're basically going to be to companies. Because of course, if you want to be a hacker, definitely pick something that you like doing, that you're interested in, get really good at that thing. But also at the same time, you also want to try to become well-rounded because it's just going to make you that much better of a hacker. Like, so it's just amazing, man. Like,
I think on that point, definitely like companies, companies, and in general, like let's say you want to start your own thing, right?
yeah,
In cybersecurity, if you're not well rounded, you're gonna have a lot of trouble doing that because, like in any field, right? There's a lot of different domains within that field, right? And if you only are good at one thing, like let's say hardware hacking
yeah,
or let's say pen testing, right? And you're not good at anything else, the problem is now, yes, you can always learn, but if you're not good at anything else, right? The issue is now if you want to, let's say, take multiple roles at a company, which some job requirements make you take multiple roles. They don't say it on the listing, but once you go into that company, you realize we have a friend actually. I won't take his name here, but he works at a healthcare company and he takes on multiple roles, right?
yeah,
He doesn't just take on one role. In fact, his company's making him fly out now, doing
yeah,
so many other things.
yeah,
And so, like, your role evolves, right? It's not like you just stay doing one thing.
right.
So you have to like learn other things as well.
Adapt.
Right, adapt.
Yeah,
And I'm not saying like learn things that you hate, right? But in your field, I'm sure that there's a couple like tangential things that sort of attach to your field. You can learn those. Like for us, it's pen testing.
hmm
But pen testing, again, it's really close to defense because we report vulnerabilities and
very
we also
close.
tell them how to fix it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Does that mean we need to be experts at defense? No.
hmm
Like we need to know the ins and outs
hmm
for sure. We don't need to know how to use a specific firewall or anything, but we know, again, known unknowns is we know how to figure out how to use something because we know that it exists, and we kind of know how to work with most of the technologies, right? Because
Yeah,
we've attacked them.
yeah,
So I think being well rounded is honestly one of the most important things you can have. You cannot be only just in one thing.
for
And
sure.
also projects, yes, they never, you should always be working on a project. Like the whole curiosity thing is so important. It's with any field, right? If you're not like maybe accounting, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah,
For
I
the
mean,
people who are doing accounting, I don't want to. But accounting maybe not, right? Like my uncle, he does accounting. He says like it's a boring job,
hmm
and yeah, it's not a field that's like insanely evolving at a rapid rate like our field is.
Right.
Same thing with like the medical field, right? People might think like you become a doctor and you're just chilling. No,
Hmm.
if you ever meet a good doctor, they'll probably be reading research reports and like new things that are coming out, new advances, right?
Yeah.
They're not just gonna sit there and like, yes, I have my certificate now or my certification. I'm a doctor, and
Hmm.
that's it, right? They're
Yeah.
gonna keep learning. Some of my cousins are doctors, and they they're always learning, right? There new research is coming out. They're always learning. Curiosity is the main drive,
Yeah.
right? You have to be curious.
It's amazing, bro, for sure. I think this next question will definitely be valuable to the listeners. What's one thing you wish someone told you when you were just starting out? Something that you think could be avoidable for the listeners, because the main thing about with learning anything, when you get good at something, you want to bring people up, you want them to not go through the same mistakes that you did. So any lessons that you learned or something that you wish you didn't do, so that the listeners know, maybe I should avoid this when I start out my
Yeah,
journey.
I mean, I think one of the biggest things was, although I always tell people to do this, like jump in the fire, kind of like
Yeah.
take the bullet, you just jump in, like
Yeah.
start hacking, right? If
Yeah.
you want to get into hacking, even defense, right? Take the bullet, like just start,
Right.
right? Don't like be stuck in tutorial hell. But I think I should always preface that because I jumped in without covering the fundamentals. Like
Hmm.
I knew Python, and that was about it, and I
Hmm.
knew how to use Linux, those
Hmm.
two things. But I did not know any networking. Like I barely knew networking, right? IP addressing and a little bit here and there, but like I didn't know what subnetting was. I didn't know what the prefixing, network prefixing, how to divide a subnet up using CIDR notation,
Yeah.
things like that. I didn't know how to do that, right?
Hmm.
I think it's really important. For some people, this doesn't work, and for some people, this does. But I think for most people, it will work as you cover your fundamentals first. What are the fundamentals? In different fields, they're a little bit different, but in like let's say general cybersecurity, networking, computer architecture, not too deep, but like knowing how computers work, what drivers are, how the motherboard works, what are the main components of the the mother on the motherboard. You have the CPU, the motherboard, the buses that's running from the CPU and the memory, and so on. How does memory function generally? Things like that, right?
Yeah.
Have some understand what paging is, things like that.
Right.
So basic computer knowledge. How do computers at an architecture level, how do they work?
Hmm.
Number two is networking. You
Hmm.
need to know some networking. Not for every field again. Like if you're a reverse engineer, maybe you don't need to know too much networking. Or a hardware hacker, not really, right? You might need to know more like electrical engineering kind of stuff. How does electricity really work?
Hmm.
But again, cover your fundamentals. So for us, for me, it was computer architecture, networking, what's it called, Linux, and programming. Those four things, right? Or when I say Linux, I mean using the command line on different systems.
Yeah.
Those four things, right? Programming any language, Python, PowerShell, whatever language you want to learn, right? PowerShell is a scripting language more than it is that. But regardless, those four things will encompass most of the things you need to know.
Yeah.
And then after that, you jump into the fire,
Yeah.
right? Don't be after that. Don't be stuck in tutorial hell.
Yeah.
So number one is cover your fundamentals. Number two is don't be stuck in tutorial hell. You have to get out of that. You have to start implementing what you're learning. And number three is don't do things that you don't like doing,
Hmm.
right? Like don't force yourself. I did this for a while. I was trying things that I really did not want to do. I tried to learn, at some point, I tried to learn Java. I don't know. I think it was because I wanted to do malware dev, but it was just I couldn't like. I already learned Python, right?
Yeah.
I don't like so once you learn one language. For those of you who like know a language, once you learn one language, it's not that hard to learn a new language, right? Because
Hmm.
they're mostly the same.
Yeah.
But that whole again tutorial going through learning Java, it was really boring, right? And I was like, you know what? Instead of doing this, I'm just gonna develop malware with Python.
Hmm.
Problem solved, right? And then when I had like for my classes, I had to learn Java and C. That's different because you kind of have to do it, right?
Hmm.
And so then I picked those things up, but never do something that you don't a project that you don't want to do. In fact, one of the Risk Lab members came up to me at our last meeting, and he asked me, um, he's kind of new to the industry, and he's like, "What project should I do?" And I literally told him word for word, "Don't do a project until you know what you want to do,
Hmm.
right? So until you can't figure out what you're curious about, like, oh, I'm into pen testing, I'm into defense or reverse engineering or forensics, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
Once you figure that out, then figuring out a project will be super easy,
Right.
right? There's YouTube videos online that you'll find that give you like 5 project ideas for your resume. Don't do those, right? I don't recommend those.
Mm.
Um, because again, you're gonna like get through half the project and you're gonna drop it,
Yeah.
right? Most people will, and I like I said, I've done some of these things, right? I found them insanely boring.
Yeah.
Instead, do projects. Be curious. Do projects that revolve around things you like, right? Hardware hacking is a big curve for me, right? Although I know like theoretically a lot about it, I've never actually practically done much hardware hacking.
Mhm.
So it's an insanely big learning curve for me, right? I'm still learning so much, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to do it, right? So you have to. Oh, right. That leads me to my fourth point is be. I think this was a problem with me was you have to be confident that you can do something, right? Don't let like maybe you have pressure around you, people telling you that you can't do it, whatever. Don't listen to those voices when it comes to this, right? Because again, there's gonna be a lot of learning, there's gonna be a lot of failure, and people will tell you a lot of things, right? People will tell you that you can't do it, or you're still not done with this project, or you've been saying you're gonna do this and you still haven't done it.
Mhm.
um, but they don't know the amount of struggle and effort that goes into doing something that you've never done before,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of practical effort that goes into it.
Mhm.
So be confident. If you want to try a medium box and hack the box and you've been doing easy boxes, jump into it, right? If you want to pick up a project, maybe a programming project, right? Oh, I want to build let's say like me, like an auto checkout, or I want to build some other price tracker. I want to build anything else, right?
Yeah.
Malware, maybe. Go for it, right? Don't be afraid that, oh, I'm gonna fail. Never be afraid of failure, I think.
Yeah.
And this is easy to say, like, even for me, it's easy to say, but I mean, we both know, right? There's times
Sure.
I've told you this too, like, there's times where I'm like, I don't know if I can do this, like
Mhm.
this is pretty tough, right?
Mhm.
You just have to close that voice.
Yeah.
Sit down, take an hour out, and just break down the problem. One of the things that I think our generation lacks a lot as well, and this is because of the advent of technology, kind of paradoxically, is we're in tech, but this is because of tech that we can't do this, is sit down without any devices. Take all your devices, any distractions, put them away.
Mhm.
Go outside or you sit down, one of the two,
Mhm.
and just take a walk, basically be with your own mind
Yeah.
for a good 30 minutes, right? And the problem that's at hand, right? For example, when I was doing one of my certification exams, the ECPPT, which is Certified Professional Pentester, by INE Security, I had a couple of hurdles during the exam, and I thought I was gonna fail. I really thought I was kind of like nervous. I was like, I'm gonna fail this. I don't think I can pass this.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I remembered some advice I heard on some random YouTube video, and it actually worked for me. Was just close the computer for a second, right? Put it down, go outside, take a walk. I prefer walking, right? And just think about the problem, what problem you have, and don't do anything practical. Just solve it in your head. What are the steps I need to take? What are things that I have not tried, right? Maybe even just go to sleep, take
Mhm.
some rest,
Yeah.
just take a break off of everything you're doing, right? Point is, don't think that you can't do it. Just understand that there's things that you haven't tried, right? The problem is every problem has a solution,
Yeah.
right? The light bulb wasn't just made.
Mhm.
Airplanes weren't just every problem people had went through trial and error, trial and error, trial and error, and then they got to the solution. You have to do the same thing here. Take a break if you're tired, go outside, take 30 minutes, and just think about the problem. I guarantee you, if you think about the problem, and you break it down in your head, you don't have to write anything, just break it down in your head, and you take some time, and I guarantee you'll find a solution.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%, bro. I think definitely, especially hackers, that feeling of banging your head against the wall. I mean, you can
Yes.
ask any hacker; they know exactly, what you're talking about. I'm sure other avenues in the cybersecurity field know, but specifically when it comes to hacking and you're trying to break something and get past something and bypass something, and you're just not figuring it out.
Mm,
It can be very, very difficult to like
mm.
keep going, and you have no idea if you're actually gonna get past this
Yeah, you're
hurdle.
like, am I stuck in a rabbit hole? Is
Yeah,
this something that's like not even related to what I'm supposed to do?
yeah.
And all these thoughts start flooding your head, and it's like, no, you have to stop them. Just shut. At that point, my number one step is I get up. I just get up and I go. Right,
Take a
walk
break.
anywhere. Maybe sit down with some family, whatever.
Hmm.
Do anything aside from be in contact with the
Yes.
screen.
Yes.
Right. No reading books. Nothing. I don't consume any information. I just relax for like a good
Yes.
5 minutes. Then I go and try to solve the problem in my head.
Yeah.
And generally, I come back with a solution.
Right.
Right. And maybe the solution doesn't work right away, but
Mhm.
I've jotted down in my head like maybe 10 ideas. I try those one by one,
Yeah.
and one of them works, right?
Mhm.
And the point is that whole process that you went through, that put you from here to here. You jumped in terms of skill, knowledge, discipline, everything from here to here, right? Anybody who's done like serious programming, software engineering, whatever, if you've built a big project, it's so insane. It's the same idea. You're running into an error in a bug in your code, and you don't know what's going on. You read through the code, you try to figure it out. You can't find the solution, or maybe you know what the problem is, but you don't know how to fix it,
Yeah.
and you're like, I don't know how to fix this, and you try to read about it online, and it's just a whole thing you've never learned about. Like
Yeah.
when I was actually developing the auto checkout bot, I had an issue with the multi-threading. I didn't know what mutexes were, right? So mutexes are like this thing where think about it like this, right? If two people are trying to use the same resource at the same time, in computers that can cause errors, what's called a race condition, um, as well as other errors. Like let's say two computers are trying to write to the same file.
Yeah.
And if they're writing at the same time to that same file, then that file's going to have a bunch of garbage in it, right? It's like two people writing on the same page on a notebook.
Yeah.
It's going to just be a bunch of mangled garbage.
Right.
So I had to figure out how to solve that problem with only one file can access one thing at a time. But that led me into a whole problem is when I figured out what mutex is, was how do I even use a mutex, right? What is a mutex? I don't really understand what it is still. That took me about 30 minutes, and then I figured out the solution after that. So yes, like that, it is, again, banging your head on a wall, right? And I always say this to everybody, is like, you will, if you're not doing that, you're not doing things right. But once you do it, it's almost like sadistic. It's like, or masochistic. It's like you like having pain. But
Yeah.
again, at the end of the day, that pain is what's making you grow.
For
You know
sure.
what I mean?
For sure. Love it, bro. So for the people who want to pursue specifically pen testing, what certs do you think are necessary? Starting in, and if they're curious, they want to be a hacker. What do you think? What's the best roadmap in your opinion?
So I mean, there's a lot of roadmaps depending on what specifically you want to do in like, hacking or pen testing. If it's specifically pen testing, then I have my own roadmap. But I would say first thing is just have a before the certifications is have a goal of getting a certification in mind, because most people will need a certification,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Read about the different certifications, which one applies to you specifically, what you want to do. Like if you're into web application security, there's specific certifications for that versus general pen testing or versus active directory pen testing. So different types of pen testing have different
Right.
certifications.
Right.
So keep that in mind when I give this advice.
Yeah.
But what's always helped me, number one, is to have a certification in mind, because that maps out what you need to do, right? Like for example, if you have a active directory certification, active directory pen testing certification you want to get, you know what projects you need to take on, what things you need to start doing. And that is basically just learning about active directory hacking,
Yeah.
hacking active directory and getting good at it, right? So you have basically stuff to do. You're not just sitting around doing nothing.
Right.
Now, personally, the path I took was it kind of built up on time, but my main goal was always the OSCP. But for those of you who know, the price is pretty $1,500 now, I think. So it is pretty expensive, and I don't recommend most people to try to pay out of pocket. I mean, you could pay out of pocket, but I definitely don't recommend going for it first, unless you have a lot of experience and you just need a cert on your name, right?
Right.
So what I did was, I got first the EJPT, which is INE Security. They used to be called eLearn Security. Now they've rebranded to INE Security, INE Security. Um, and they have a lot of certs. Their two most popular ones, I think, are the EJPT, eLearn Security Junior Pen Tester, and the ECPPT, which is eLearn Security Certified Professional Pen Tester.
Yeah.
I took EJPT version 1 and ECPPT version 2. Both of them are good. I don't know how good the EJPT version 2 is, because they just came out with a new version.
Yeah.
And some things have changed.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were great for me. Those are the two things I took in terms of pen testing. But again, like I said, when you're breaking in, especially, you don't only want to have certs geared towards a specific discipline or domain. You might want to have some general certs. Like another one is very commonly I would say people breaking in should get this. You don't have to, right? But if you want to like get a better sense of what you want to do, definitely the CompTIA Security Plus is great. You also have the CompTIA A Plus that I recommend to people. You don't need to get the cert, but cover the curriculum. It's free.
Yeah.
Cover the curriculum. It's great.
Mhm.
CompTIA Network Plus as well. So the real path would probably look something like this if you're going from the very start and you have no experience. Is the CompTIA A Plus. You don't have to get the certification, but cover the curriculum.
Mhm.
Then the Network Plus, get the certification. Then the Security Plus, get the certification. And then after that, if you want to go pen testing, you would go maybe either directly for either the CPTS, which is by Hack the Box. That's CPTS, Certified Penetration Testing Specialist.
Yes.
CPTS, they have a whole course, and I think you're doing it right now.
Mhm.
Their course is amazing. Their CPTS course is insanely good.
Yeah.
And it's not that expensive either, because you can just pay for Hack the Box Academy, which is like somewhere around $11. If you're a
Yeah.
student, it's actually $8.
Yep.
It's really cheap. I actually had Academy for a little bit, like a month or two,
Yeah.
because I was doing a couple modules on that. So either go straight for the CPTS, right? This is after your CompTIA certs. Either go straight for the CPTS. You could also go for the INE security path, which is the ECPPT, Certified Professional Pen Tester. And again, you have to memorize these, but
Mhm.
search these up and you'll find all the detail about
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Or you go for the EJPT first, which is easier, much easier, and then you go for these. So EJPT, I'll give you a quick breakdown, is basically a real world hacking environment. You hack a network, I think 3 or 4 machines. Once you get past those, you have to answer multiple choice questions that relate to those machines. And
Yeah.
the only way you can answer them is by getting into them, right? Because there's questions like, what is this user's password? And the only way to know that, obviously, is if you hack into the machine.
Mm-hmm.
So those, if you get, I think 15 out of 20 or 6, something like that, right, then you pass. So that's a little bit lower level, sir. And the attacks are mostly not too complex. They're pretty easy, right? Like Metasploit, things like that. ECPPT, CPTS are 1 tier higher. They give you a longer. So EJPT, they give you 3 days. ECPPT and CPTS, they give you, in the ECPPT, they give you a week. For the hacking part, and then the second week you have to write a report. So it's not like you just hack and you answer questions. This one you have to write a professional penetration testing report that covers all the vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
executive summary, attack narrative, all that stuff, right? So again, like I said, it's one thing higher. It's more professional. You're doing more of the professional stuff that you would do in the industry. CPTS is basically the same. The time frame is a little bit different. The attacks are somewhat different. So both of them are great. Either one would choose whichever one you want. I would probably recommend going for the CPTS, although the ECPPT I think is known better in the industry, but that is changing. So the CPTS is up and coming. Hack the Box is getting really well known. They're working with a lot of big companies.
Yeah.
So they're like Synac and all these big companies they're working with. So I definitely wouldn't just sweep it under the rug. Basically, see which one works for you better, pricing wise and everything, and go for that one. And then for the higher tier is OSCP. So definitely, although people say the CPTS is, so if you pass the ECPPT or the CPTS, that means you're very close to being able to pass the OSCP. You just have to consider the time frame. The OSCP is about, I think, 48 or 24 hours. I think it's 48 hours, right?
The CPTS?
No, the OSCP.
OSCP to 48 hours.
Yeah, OSCP is 48 hours. I think it's 5 boxes and then some Active Directory. They revamped the whole thing. So keep in mind that the time frame is much less. You don't have to write a pen test report. If you do, you get some extra points. But regardless, I would say OSCP is 1 tier higher. So once you've gone through those, you're almost ready for the OSCP. There's also some tool limitations. You can't use all the tools. Metasploit, there's a limitation
Actually,
of that.
I think it's 24.
24
I
hours,
think
right?
it's 24 hours.
It's one of the two. It's either
It's one of the
24 or
two.
48.
Yeah.
They might give some extra hours for the report that you don't have to write, but you can.
Yeah.
But again, check the details on your own. Idea is OSCP is one layer higher. And then again, there are higher level certs.
Yeah.
You can go for the OSWE, I think, offensive security
Yeah.
web expert. So that's like
Yeah.
web app penetration. They also have OSED, OS offensive security exploit developer, which is for like architectural level bugs like memory overflows, buffer overflows, stack and heap overflows, stuff like that. So exploit development, which is much more like harder stuff generally.
Yeah.
So those are the higher level certs. There's a lot more specialized. GIAC has a bunch. GIAC has a professional penetration testing cert as well. They have what's called a GWAPT, which is GIAC Web Application Penetration Tester. They have a bunch of others as well.
Right.
But I would generally say EJPT, then either CPTS or what's it called, the ECPPT, then the OSCP.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if you're capable enough, you can skip the first tier. So EJPT, you can skip it. If you think you're capable enough, you can also skip the second tier and go straight to the OSCP. Again, it just works. This is just the general path. You don't have to get all these certs. You can even skip the Security Plus. You can skip the Network Plus, A Plus. If you have that knowledge, you don't have to take them, right? If you want them to have if you want to have them on your credentials, for sure, right? Credential wise, A Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus are great. You also have the ECPPT and the CPTS that are great, and the OSCP. EJPT is also there, but again, like not as much as the others.
Yeah.
So I'd prefer like the Security Plus or the Network Plus probably over those ones, or maybe even the Pentest Plus, the CompTIA Pentest Plus. HR loves it. You have to work with whatever they love, right? So I would say there's a lot of certs out there, but ideas for pen testing, yeah, these are the couple contenders. I would also add the CompTIA Pentest Plus. The only thing is it's a multiple choice exam. We both took it. It's multiple choice, so it's not like practical. You're not going to learn hands-on hacking.
Yeah.
But you will know a lot
For sure.
when you leave. I think there's a lot of good stuff in there. Like I looked at the curriculum, I kind of sped through the curriculum, but there's a lot of great stuff. So if you're starting out in pen testing, definitely. But fundamentally, definitely the CompTIA. They called it the trifecta, the A Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus. You have to get all three for HR. No, I would recommend Security Plus. Network Plus, you can also sub that out for the CCNA, which is more, I think, better in general. It's more detailed. It's a little bit tougher. It's Cisco Certified Network Associate. They also have the CCNP, which I'm not sure. I think Cisco Certified Network Practitioner.
Yeah.
Um, I'm actually going for the CCNA soon, so I would recommend CCNA over Network Plus. But again, all about your path, right? But these are the general contenders. So I wouldn't go for like some random company cert, right? Like someone you've never heard of. You also have THN or TCM, the Cyber Mentor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like their curriculum too much, so I don't really use their curriculum too much. Their certifications are the PNPT, Professional Network Penetration Tester, is valued. However, I don't think it's that like I think there's better alternatives.
For sure.
CPTS and stuff are definitely
I
better. I
agree.
think
I agree.
you could still take it though. Just again, it really just comes down to what you prefer.
Yeah.
My path was EJPT, then I got the A plus, then I got the security. No, sorry, the ECPPT, then I got the security plus, and then the Pentest plus,
Yeah. Yeah.
and now I'm going for the CCNA and the OSCP. So really mold your own path, but these are the contenders. You have the Cyber Mentor, you have Hack the Box, you have Offensive Security, you have GIAC, you have INE Security, and also there's one more. If I get the name, I'll probably mention it. But yeah, those are the main ones.
Yeah.
That there's still one more I can't remember for some reason.
Yeah.
But there, you also have Cisco, right? Cisco is again networking, not pen testing, but I'll mention them. Cisco, those are like the main ones that you might want to look at. There's other ones as well outside of pen testing,
Mm-hmm.
but in pen testing, definitely OSCP, offensive security, GIAC, INE security, and the Cyber Mentor. Those and Hack the Box. So those five, the big names.
So if you're pursuing cybersecurity, get used to these acronyms.
Yeah,
man.
a lot of
like it
acronyms.
never ends, man.
Yeah,
We're
so
just talking about certs right now, but
yeah,
all the information that you learn in
a
security,
lot of acronyms.
acronyms all day,
Get
every
used
day.
to it.
So
But yeah, definitely. Like again, don't try to memorize these certs or anything. Just Google
yeah,
them. You can
yeah.
figure out want to leave like a path. Let's say you're going for the AJPT, but you're not sure. You can comment it out, and we can figure out. Let's say like maybe your experience level is enough to go, skip one of the certs, and I would recommend it because again, you want to save money, right? Although eLearn Security, INE Security, their certifications are relatively cheap and they go on discount very often. So I paid $100 for the EJPT, which is really good. I paid 300, I think, or 250 for the ECPPT, and then the other certs I got all of them sponsored. So yeah.
Yeah. Even though, yeah, we mentioned all these certs, but I think it's important to know, like, just don't rack up certs just to rack them up. Like, know what you want to do and just go.
Right,
You know
right,
what I
right.
mean? So
Definitely don't get like useless certs. If you're not
yeah,
into
yeah,
web app hacking, you don't need to get a GWAP.
yeah, yeah,
The GWAP, right? They're expensive. A GIAC has expensive certs, like
yeah,
generally speaking. So you don't want to go for certs that you don't need. And if they're not valuable to HR kind of thing, like if they're not valuable to companies, don't get them, right? EJPT is kind of valuable, right? But for me, mostly it was to see where I stand in my knowledge. That's why I got it. It's $100, but again, it is still a credential. It's not like it's not a credential. So it's
hmm
better than nothing. It's
hmm
cheap, and it tells you where you sit in terms of or where you stand in terms of your knowledge and your capabilities, right? A plus is the same thing as you could have it and it's good, but again, you're paying if you're a student 250 something for each. Yeah, A plus has two cores, two exams that you have to take, so you're paying 250 for each one. If you're not a student, you're paying more, right? So keep those things in mind. So A plus, I would definitely recommend just going through the curriculum if you don't want to pay for it, right? If you have it, yes, it will open doors for sure. It's not like it's not going to open doors,
hmm
but again, consider your budget,
yeah, and
basically.
time.
Right, budget and time.
Yeah,
Consider your budget and time, and think about what you prioritize, and which certifications you prioritize, and which sort of fields you might
for
prioritize,
sure,
and
for
go
sure.
from there. Oh, right, ISC2. ISC2 has some
Mm,
great ones.
yeah,
I think the CISSP, which is like the biggest
yeah,
cert, I think is
yeah.
part of ISC2. Internet Security something, I forgot. They're like one of the biggest security organizations out there. You also have ISACA, ISACA,
hmm
ISACA. They're
hmm
also one of the big internet, security uh, organizations, and they have some certs as well. So I would recommend looking into those. So I've mentioned 7 companies or 7 organizations, and you should look into all of those and figure out your own sort of thing, and based on your own sort of uh, standing. So Hack the Box, ISACA, ISACA, ISC2 or ISC, call them whatever, GIAC, um, the Cyber Mentor,
hmm
um, what was the other ones? CompTIA, and I'm missing a couple. INE Security as well.
IE, Hackbox. You
I
said
mentioned
yeah,
Hack the Box. Right, just rewind and look at the other ones. So
yeah,
there's about like 7 or 8
for
actually.
sure.
So
Yeah,
a bunch.
yeah, bro. It's been really, really good information, good advice throughout this whole entire conversation. To wrap it up with the last question, we've mentioned earlier that we are part of an organization, Risk Lab at Florida International University. Um, and just to, let people know our experience with it and how much it's actually helped us. What do you think being a part of that organization has really helped with you, in terms of like your growth or just like connecting and networking with people? What would you say your experience with
So
Risk Lab is?
honestly, I mean, I met you through Risk
Yeah,
Lab as well. So I
for
met
sure.
I met Jalen through Risk Lab as well. And the thing is, I think one of the things our sort of community lacks is like a lot of people are kind of afraid to network or afraid to like get to know people,
Yeah,
right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people are naturally like a little bit less talkative and so on, but you have to realize, right? Like know who you know opens doors, right? Who you know opens doors, and not only that, but it also advances. When you have a community around you, it makes it so much more easier to learn or become better and sort of stick to the industry. So I mean, I started in Risk Lab about what 2 years ago now. Two, yeah,
almost.
yeah,
Yeah, I
just
think
about
so.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
And at this point, I think I'm the leader. So I mean, I am the
You
leader.
are the leader.
I have to act humble. So right. So I am the leader now, and for the cybersecurity division.
Yes.
And so we're working on a lot of projects, right? And I think one of the biggest things was number one, certification sponsorship. So obviously, for those individuals who are capable and show their drive, they get their certification sponsored. And I got actually two certifications sponsored, right? The Security Plus and the Pentest Plus. I didn't pay for either of them, and so and maybe more on the way. So definitely, like there's a lot of a lot of opportunity when it comes to certs. But as well as that, one thing I never had as a kid and growing up, I mean, I'm pretty social, and he knows this. I can never stop talking,
Yeah.
but so maybe I'm the outlier in that sense. But definitely I've never had, even having many friends or people around me, I never had people who were into the same stuff as me, like hacking, right? They were never into pen testing, hacking, sort of like that. And if you, so I always kind of felt alone when it came to that. Like it felt kind of bad because nobody would, when I would talk about something, I had
Yeah.
nobody to share my interest with.
Very niche.
Right.
Exactly.
It's a very niche thing. And
Yeah.
it's like you need to have, a community around you. And so Risk Lab, when I came to it, got introduced through one of my friends. We were taking a psychology class together. He was like, I'm in Risk Lab, and he brought me over, and that's how the whole thing started.
Yeah.
And from that I met like a lot of people, like Diego, for example, right? He's super into reverse engineering and low level systems, and I love that. And we chat for like hours sometimes, right? About whatever topic, whatever thing might be going on in the industry right now, right? And like that connection is, you might think that you don't need it, especially like maybe if you're not like too social and you don't like being around people too much, but trust me, when you have it, you're gonna have people to rely on. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? When you feel like, "Oh, I can't do it," you have people to motivate you. When you want to do a project, right? You have people you can call on, right? And not only even that, even in the professional world, maybe 10 years down the line, right? A lot of these people that you meet that are in the same industry as you can actually work with them, maybe start up something with them,
Yeah.
right? Some new venture, right? So always think um, that people around you will change a lot of the opportunities you get. So take that opportunity when you have it, networking, so on, right? And I think even aside from that, this is kind of, I guess, cringy, and I definitely like, yeah, a little bit, pretty cringy actually,
Mhm.
is the leadership skills that you learn, right? It's like
No, for sure.
they say
Yeah.
this in all organizations and all these things, but it's true, right? Like I'm saying this, telling you that it is kind of cringy to say this, but even then, you learn how to be there. Like you have to show up,
Yeah.
right? You have to put in the time and effort. I think one of the things people lack, and I've seen a lot of people come to Risk Lab and just leave, right? They didn't actually put in the time and effort. Versus people like, I won't take names, but some of the leaders I work with, right? They stuck around, right? And like for example, even Jalen stuck around, and because of that, we have opportunities, right? Different certifications we can get sponsored, different research opportunities that might open up. So benefits even like monetarily is where we don't have to pay for certification, and that's great for us, right? So even aside from that, is the people who stuck around is they started out here and they're here now
Yeah.
because they took on responsibilities.
Yeah.
One of the guys that was previously the leader, he was working full time, right? From pretty young age, working full time at a company. Even then, he was holding weekly meetings, and we're doing all this, and we're planning out. Me and him were drafting up different documents for the students and so on. But the thing is, what he learned from that was value, extremely
For
valuable. Was
sure.
that drive? It's like you need to put in the work. You need to be there. If you don't take on like leadership roles where you're not you're not actively seeking out opportunities, you will not get anywhere,
Mhm.
right? And I think ki- uh, for those of you who don't know about Darknet Diaries, great podcast, Apple podcast, amazing podcast. Definitely listen to it. Maybe you'll discover what you want to do from listening to that podcast. The host Jack Resider, he covers like all sorts of security topics. Invites people on the show. So one of the most recent episodes, it's called Grifter. Is this guy who pretty big name at DEF CON actually.
Mhm.
He's worked with like some of the world's biggest companies, done a lot of consulting for some of the biggest companies in the world, financial companies, and so on. And he was mentioning in the podcast is like one thing for me was so after he got out of the military, he was saying that one thing for me was like when I started working at DEF CON, so he used to volunteer at DEF CON, right?
Mhm.
Doing different things, handling different tasks. And because of that volunteer, not getting paid, just volunteering at DEF CON because he liked it, right? The community of people out there, like thousands of people coming that are all sort of like minded, just getting that opportunity to volunteer and making connections with people
Yeah.
led him to becoming, to open so many opportunities down the door. Sorry, down like, down the road is consulting, things like that. Um, Becoming acquainted with some of the biggest names in the industry,
Yeah.
right? Also becoming one of the biggest names in the industry.
Yeah.
So it's not like he was some ex NSA hacker or some ex, and nothing like that. Just
Right.
some guy who maybe did some crazy stuff when he was a kid, as hacking, whatever. The point is, he put in the time and effort at DEF CON. In fact, because of him, villages, DEF CON villages, if you don't know what they are, like they have the they have the hacking, the hardware hacking village, social engineering village, car hacking village, lock picking village, and these villages are like different sort of sections where they focus on these different topics, right? And villages were born because of him. He started the whole village
It's
concept.
crazy.
Not only did DEF CON pick it up, but most other conventions, security conventions, picked it up. I think Black Hat as well. All
Yeah.
the I think he started it. Yeah, he started DEF CON, and all these other conventions picked it up, right? So if you just take some leadership roles, meaning you push yourself out there, you take on some responsibilities, that will be a game changer, right?
Yeah.
And that's like why Risk Lab it sort of made me take on leadership roles where I was like, I was willing to do it, right? I was willing to take on roles, and I took on roles, and I think right now and down the line, it's gonna help,
Yeah.
right? Right now, it's helping with a lot of things, and even with just the people I'm surrounded by, right? We got like you yourself, and then so many other people. Is It's not like they're just connections for now, right? They're connections for life,
It's long term.
right? Long term connection. You never know what you might be doing down the line. What I might be doing down the line. Our paths might intertwine, and we might do something together, or it might be something else, right? Somebody else. You never know. Somebody you mentor today at the organization 5 years down the line becomes an expert in the industry and is now asking you, let's do this together,
Yeah.
or calling on you, right?
Mhm.
And so now you've opened opportunities down the door because you put your time in.
Right.
So that's what I think Risk Lab, in terms of leadership, in terms of the network that I have, and in terms of general benefits as well, like certifications, things like that as well. So FIU students, anybody who Risk Lab also has a bunch of other what's it called branches
Yeah.
in other countries and states as well. They don't have a cybersecurity branch. We're the only one in FIU that have a cybersecurity branch. So if anybody's willing to join, come, right?
Yeah.
You learn a lot.
For sure. For sure. Get to meet new people. I'm
Mhm.
glad we really touched on that. Meeting people, networking, trying to build an ecosystem, especially for people who are doing cybersecurity, more specifically pen testing with CTFs. It's important to
Right.
have people alongside with you, friends, something like
Hmm.
that, get together and just do capture the flag events.
Literally, me and Diego and a bunch of other guys, we played a couple CTFs. In
Yeah.
fact, our team won one of the CTFs that was held locally in
Yes.
Miami.
Yes.
Right, one of them came third place. I myself came third place. One of our guys came first place.
Yeah.
We had like 8 people that were in the top 10. Right,
Yeah.
we had a lot of people there. In general, other events as well. Cyversity, these other organizations came out and sponsored our shirts. We also met like professionals, like for example the CISO of Hard Rock,
Yeah.
right, or the chief security officer of Booking Holdings, right?
Yeah.
Met some amazing people. We met some ex criminal hackers that were like some really insanely cool people that we met, as well as young guys like us, 24, 25, working as pen testers, breaking into banks, doing some cool stuff, right? And they offered us advice, and now they're a connection, right? It's not like we just after that one time, we forget about them, right? We see them every now and then here and there,
Yeah.
but they're part of our network now.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're just detached from them.
Right.
Opportunities can spring from anywhere, right?
Yeah. Go to events, guys. Very important. Meet a lot of people. You never know, what this person will do for you just by meeting them. So Uh,
I do want to mention
yeah.
DEF CON, by the way. DEF CON is something called groups.
Yes.
Um, I'm saying this because if anybody is in Florida, DEF CON has about 10 groups in Florida, like something like that. One is in Miami, one's in Boca, one's in Orlando, one's in Tampa. There's a bunch. Um, I would highly recommend go to these local chapters. OWASP, the guys who or the organization that manages like the vulnerabilities for web applications, right? The biggest international organization for that. They also have chapters, but DEF CON is one of the coolest ones. They have chapters, right? So they have one chapter in Miami, one chapter in Boca, one chapter in Orlando, and a couple other chapters. I highly recommend if you're in those areas or in any other state, in even a different country, countries like I think India, you have a couple others as well. They all have chapters, right? I think Asia, some part of Asia, some other parts of Asia as well have chapters. Go to those chapters if they're near you,
Mm,
right? If they're a 30-minute drive, take the drive. Go. You will meet professionals of the industry
yeah.
for sure, because the heads of the chapters generally are some people who have a lot of experience. So
Mm,
go and network, right? Like get out of your comfort zone. If you're not comfortable with going to events and meeting people, you have to get out of that shell. Sooner or later, you will have to, right? So definitely recommend if you're in Florida, go to any one of the chapters. I definitely will be going to the local chapters near me, and just meeting with the people that are holding these chapters. You know what I'm saying?
yes. All right. I think that about wraps up all the questions. Yusuf, appreciate you, brother. Thank you for coming onto the podcast
No, it's a pleasure.
and relaying a bunch of the advice and experiences that you've had in the space. And thank you guys for tuning in as well. Definitely a lot more to come, a lot more guests that I will be inviting to come and share their experiences and what kind of advice that they would like to provide for other people. So,
Also, I'm gonna plug myself here.
yes, I was going to mention,
Reach if you want to
yeah,
connect with me on LinkedIn
I will put his LinkedIn in the description.
for sure.
So,
Yeah. So I want.
everybody,
I mean, I want to like. I'm pretty social. I like meeting new people. So
yeah,
connect with me. Doesn't really matter, who you are, what your experience level is. Meeting new people is something that you should always do. So
sure.
definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. We can talk, have a conversation, maybe find something that we have in common.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will catch you back at the next episode